Hey, so whenever I read a book, it's usually really easy for me to tell if it's the best book I've read all year. I would say 2015 had to be Reasons and Persons. It's just so important in my opinion, particularly for its work in non-religious ethics. See, for most of human history, our ethics have been structured on gods and religion. People reckoning that there is a further fact, a soul, an ego, an immortal miasma of awesomeness after we die. A non-physical presence that transcends our body in time, so we can do stuff forever. Basically something to give us more than a mortal life, because that's not good enough. I think most people are raised and comforted by this belief, especially when as a child, the thought of eternal nothingness crosses your mind. Thus, identity on both an individual and cultural scale have formed ideals, belief, and moralities that we're more than just bodies, or more than what even the most advanced science can explain. I know I was programmed to be Catholic. My grandma used to take me to church. She was devout and believed in God, and she tried to instill this belief into me. However, as I grew up, I grew really discontent with God because there wasn't a lot of facts surrounding his nature. It was all faith, and it just made me really uncomfortable because the whole thing kind of sounded made up, and it's kind of an important thing just to be making up. There was just a lack of facts to God's existence. Here's the thing, though. Prior to that scrutiny of religion, I believed I was meant for heaven and eternity. We're talking when I was a child of no more than 8 years old. So my identity, my morality, all that junk formed and solidified and became part of me. Of course, developing a favor for philosophy and humanism, I changed a lot of things about myself. Adjustments had to be made, and I think a lot of you know what I mean. I put myself into positions of uncertainty regarding the notions of the afterlife, and that was scary. There was just a lot of questions that didn't have concrete answers. I didn't want to be a non-existent thing, and death really hurts apparently, and there would probably be no salvation, etc. I didn't know, and I still don't know for certain of these things. By the time I was 20, you would think all the parts of me which had to change for the shift in my thinking would be, well, changed. However, as Derek Parfit points out in amazing detail, there is one part of me that has not changed since I chose to live my life favoring philosophy, science, and reason over religion and God, aka uncertainty regarding the notion of a soul. This area mainly lies in my own identity, and that's what Reasons and Persons covers. It talks about personal identity and what it really means. See, despite the fact that I had no religious parts of me whatsoever anymore, my identity was still kind of under the impression that there was a soul. A further fact, a Cartesian ego. But according to Parfit, my identity is essentially not something that possesses a singular definition. I'm literally not the exact same person I was a few years back. All the molecules in my body have been replaced over a course of years, and it's going to happen again. My beliefs and my feelings, they've changed. So in some respects, I'm not even the same person that I was. Now there are a few things about me that have stayed the same, but that's pure coincidence. I have changed so much that it would actually be more accurate to consider me a series person, or an installment of people. Like a series of books, if you like that analogy. Even though I had embraced the tenets of philosophy over religion, I still had yet to examine what this change meant for my identity. Of course, I knew my morality was going to need some modifications, but it wasn't until I read Prophet that I realized how wrong-headed people are about their own identities. I attribute this to a lack of introspection, and I fell victim to this myself. Even though I reduced the existence of God to a man-made convention, I think I still behaved as if I was more than my brain and body. And if that is not the case, that we're just our brain and we're just physical beings, as Parfit endeavors to prove in Reasons and Persons, then a great change must still take place within me and others. Parfit is trying to diminish the idea of the ego, even alluding to the fact that it might not even exist, that we're just a brain that formed the concept of the ego. More specifically, he thinks the ego, as a personal identity, is not what matters, even if it is the case. He instead favors what he calls R, or relation. Better put, this is known as psychological continuity, or the connection we have with the incarnations of ourselves as series persons, the connection I have to myself when I was younger, and the connection I'll have to myself when I'm older, the relations between those people, who are all me, just as a series person. This is a weird concept, no doubt. But like I said, it is a very important and decisive win for non-religious ethics. Although he doesn't point to any ideal moral system, he does sabotage the self-interest theory, which I would say most of the people in the world follow. And of course, it would be better if everybody was altruistic, but that isn't enough motivation for people to make that change. Non-religious ethics is in its infancy, because just a few hundred years ago, you could be put to death for dissing God on that level. Now our world has become slightly more accepting of the idea that God might not be this omnipotent being, or there might not even be a God. We as people are still trying to adjust to it. Parfit's work has provided a great service to humanity, and I know I have a lot of thinking to do about my identity and others.